The following program is a UWTV classic.
From the University of Washington in Seattle, Upon Reflection with Al Page. Our guest is Larry Coryell, an internationally known guitarist, recording artist for Muse Records, and former University of Washington music student.
Jazz. Is it truly an American form of music today? Was it always just an American form of music?
It seems pretty worldwide, but if you have to talk about it in terms of where it came from here. New
Orleans?
Well, traditionally from the Southern Delta. This is what I've been told, that it had its roots more or less in New Orleans, the Southern Delta area. I've heard it defined as black people from the South taking their own African heritage and combining it with European harmony. I kind of like that one.
Then why aren't you black, Larry?
Well, I don't know. It wasn't my karma to be born black this particular lifetime.
Is it difficult for a white jazz musician to be accepted by black jazz musicians?
The race thing doesn't even come into it anymore. If you can play, you can play.
What black musicians have influenced you?
Wes Montgomery. Directly as a guitarist with Wes Montgomery, and
so did you study his records? Did you listen to?
Yeah, when I was a student here, I spent when I was working, putting my way through school as a houseboy at Phi Sigma Sigma sorority up there on Greek Row. I was down in the basement. I had this little tiny record player, and I had a record by Wes Montgomery. In my spare time, I'd sit there and playing the record over and over again, and then I'd start to take his ideas off the record, phrase by phrase. And another fellow that I tried to take ideas off of records was a guitarist named Tal Farlow.
When you study people, how do you develop your own style? How do you keep from just being a clone of what they're doing?
The purpose of studying somebody else's soloing is to see how a solo gets constructed, because I needed some content, I needed some vocabulary. And from that, you kind of get the principles and eventually develop your own thing. And for me, I have to, because I'm still listening to other people and hearing what they're playing and trying to play it, so I had to remember to play my own thing.
Now, there are other terms associated with jazz: swing, bop, bebop. Are those synonyms, or are they sort of subgroupings of jazz itself?
Well, bop and bebop are the same thing, and swing came before that. Swing has two meanings. Swing refers to the swing era, when the big bands held sway. I guess that was in the 30s. We're talking Benny Goodman.
Now, what's the difference between bop and swing?
Well, swing is more straight-ahead dance music, and it's got this and it's not quite so fast. But bop was a more musicians type music. Bop was very difficult, more difficult melodies like. Dig. Never had this phrase next. We would never have in swing.
You use the expression musician's kind of music. What is musician's kind of music?
What happened was that World War II came along, and all the musicians in the big bands who were draftable took off. They went to war. This is the way it was given to be. Maybe I'm not exactly right. And the younger cats were left, and they had to fill the chairs, and they started you know, their employment was in the big bands, but I think what happened, I'm just guessing now because I wasn't there. What happened was they started coming up with their own music. And they would take a song form, like whispering, and put another melody on top, like whispering.
I love you, I'm proposing marriage, right?
Yeah, no, and then if they went da-da, da-da, they put that other melody on top.
All right, let's differentiate jazz from some other sounds. Classical music. Do you listen to classical music? Does it
Sure.
influence at all?
Oh, yeah, it's a big influence on me. I love classical music. And I played quite a lot of classical music in my career, doing more and more. With jazz, you're an improviser.
Right.
Even though you're working with, and you're working with a certain vocabulary and a certain rhythm framework. You know, if the feeling isn't there, it's really not jazz anymore. So I was told. That's the way I was brought up. With classical music, the challenge is in the interpretation. And because I do kind of a fusion between the two, there are segments where I can put in splinters of improvisation, but even then, even when I'm doing a fusion, for example, when I do the Firebird Suite by Stravinsky or the Rite of Spring by Stravinsky, the challenge is in the interpretation. You have to stick to the written note.
Take a little piece and show us how you might play it with a classical teacher in the room, and then show us how you might play it if the teacher left the room.
I'm going to have to just jump into the middle of the third movement here.
We're with you.
The middle of the third movement.
We remember the first and second, so we're ready for the third.
Okay, but now here's the way I do it in the jazz thing. Throw in some, I hear a lot of flamenco phrases in here. Half step above the tonic. And even though that was probably more a Slavic thing, you know, a Russian thing, it's definitely a European type thing.
Now let's talk about blues. Is blues part of jazz or something entirely different?
Blues
Separate?
is the basis of all jazz music. Blues is also the basis for all rock and roll music. Blues is the essence, I believe, of America's contribution. And it started with the real and it evolved into all kinds of stuff. Now this is in the key of E because, you know, and then that's key of E, very standard guitar key for blues, but then it changes as you get into this kind of more of a swing thing, you know, like more changes.
What's interesting about blues, however, is that blues has a sad connotation to it, yet the last piece you played had an up flavor, and a lot of stuff that you play has an up flavor.
Oh yeah, blues doesn't always have to be sad, because, well, the thing about the more basic blues is that it can be in a dominant seventh mode like this, but because it has a raised 9, a blue note, and another flat 5, you can get a minor over a major like this. And to legitimate Western ears, that's dissonance, cacophony, you know. But that's where the sad comes, you know. But you can have a happy blues too.
And where does rock come in? Why aren't you a rock star? Why don't you come out on stage with a puff of smoke every time you come out?
Because my roots are really in the jazz thing. The thing about rock and roll that was interesting in my generation as I was coming up is that a lot more quality came into the music.
In terms of the complexity of the music?
The sheen.
Now, how would you define sheen?
The product. They did things to it. Compositions got more sophisticated. It actually got classical in a sense. The minds, the talent that was contributing to rock and roll was very, very strong, very deep. But the reason I didn't get into rock and roll, I was just thinking about that the other day. I was watching MTV. And I was
could have been
watching,
your big moment.
Yeah, and I was watching this guy, Steve Vai, who plays with David Lee Roth. And he's a very good musician. He's really a fantastic musician, and the guitar solos that he takes are very complex and very, a lot of notes and like, how does he do it, that kind of thing. And I was very attracted to this, and I was very impressed by it. But when I step back, even the very best rock and roll, even the best rock and roll that's happening today, I'm not talking about the Beatles because they were another thing. The very best rock and roll happening today, if I step back, it's harmonically so limited that it doesn't appeal to my it just doesn't appeal to my training. And I got my training here in Seattle, and I was around pure jazz cats.
What about country music? Some people just laugh at country music.
Country music has made tremendous inroads, but always in country music there was tremendous musicianship. When I was a kid growing up in the Yakima Valley in the late 50s, from 1950 to 1961, I was only listening to country music. And the best musician I heard on there was Chet Atkins. Of course, years later I got to play in Nashville and meet Chet. And he played for me, and I really saw what a great contribution the country music has made to the world, especially for guitar.
Show us a little country and then take it up to a jazz motif.
Boy. That is a Chet Atkins introduction to St. Louis blues that he recorded somewhere in the late 50s. And that's a country player. And you can hear the country stuff. You can hear all that in there. But now the way I would take it, let me see how I would take it. For St. Louis blues, I'd probably put it in another key. just a little bit more, you know, just a little bit more. So there was a lot of jazz in Chet Atkins' arrangement. Another nice thing that he would do, oh boy, this is going down memory lane. Now let me see if I can just get this together. Oh boy, let's see. This kind of thing, where you have a bass line. What's happened is very interesting in jazz guitar solo playing and duet playing. They've developed a similar thing. I'll go from E, I'll go from, where was an A, I'm going to go back to F and get a thing like, bass lines are there.
All right, one more category, commercial music. What the devil is commercial music?
Well, commercial simply means whatever sells, you know. Commercial music. I don't know. I don't know anything about commercial music.
You ever hear a piece and say that's commercial?
Oh, one time in France. I'll tell you what it was. It was in April of '81, and I had a group with a European guitarist named Philip Catherine and a drummer named Alphonse Mouzon. He was very commercially oriented, you know. He said, let's play some funk, you know, let's get people dancing. I forgot what we played. I think we played, let's see. Very repetitive, very simple, almost a child type melody. And at the end of the performance, a Frenchman yelled out, "Commercial!" I mean, everything else we were doing was like, everything else was like that, you know. But it's funny, when I left Seattle, moved to New York in September of '65, the #1 song in the nation was "The In Crowd" by Ramsey Lewis. I mean, that's a great artist. Fantastic artist. I think the denotation of commercial, you know, literally selling something, I guess, you know, making commerce, gets confused with the connotation, which is a very pejorative thing, you know. But I can't play commercial. You know, if I knew how to, I wouldn't be down at Jazz Alley. But I know a lot of people who started out in jazz and were educated in jazz and classical and made a determination to do that. And they did it well. It's a whole other thing. You know, it takes a lot more focusing on almost a formula.
Tell us a little bit about this guitar. Is this a Wes Montgomery model? What is this thing?
I wish Wes could have played a guitar like this. I think he would have had a lot of fun with it. This is a 12-string guitar.
Let's start at the beginning. What's the difference between a 6-string and a 12-string guitar? What can you get out of a 12-string you can't get out of a 6-string?
We've got the 6 tones, E, A, from the bottom up, E, A, D, G, B, E. And a normal guitar is tuned the same way. The only thing is, with the 12-string, the low E is doubled, got an octave. The low A has got an octave. Same for the D, same for the G. And then the remaining 2, the B and the E, are doubled. So you get almost like a phasing effect with the top 2 strings. And you can get this, you can get inner voices because the octave string on the G gives you inner voicings. Like, let me play some. You hear that high, you're getting a high B on the 3rd string. In order to do that, you have to play a lot of times with your fingers.
How do you pick out an instrument? Can you just grab one and play it and know instantly whether it's good or not?
You know, the way it sounds, you know, also the way it plays. Because a lot of times a guitar can sound great, but it's real hard to play. And conversely, it's
why is it hard to play?
Because the strings are too high. The strings are too high off the neck. Or it's just you know, shoddy workmanship. But the best combination is a guitar that sounds good and also plays relatively good.
And what kind of money are we talking about?
This guitar, I believe, is around $1,700.
I want to change the subject for a moment. People use terms to evaluate jazz groups like tight and hot. Now, how do you evaluate a group? How can you tell whether they're good or not?
If it sounds good, if they're really saying something. Now, let me see if I can be really helpful. First of all, if it's going to be a small group, you want to listen to how well the drummer and the bass player are playing together. You want to see how, that's the tightness. If they're together, if they're not together, the foundation is lost. Then if there's a keyboard or a pianist or kind of supporting the central figure, this is assuming you have a horn player or a guitarist as a central figure, then you listen to how well he accompanies. And the term is called comping. And it's a real art to properly accompany. It's very important that the accompanist doesn't get in the way of the soloist. And it's also very important to play in tune. It's very important to have a good feeling, you know, to be hot, or if you're going to play cool, just as long as the feeling is good. And then maybe most importantly is what is the guy saying, you know, what kind of, how is he using the jazz vocabulary? How is he using the musical vocabulary that's available? Because the choices, there are a lot of choices how you can approach a solo. But for me, because of the experience, I've been doing this all my life, I know. I can just tell. I do remember the times when I didn't know, when it all sounded good. When all jazz music just sounded good to me because I didn't understand it.
But if you walk into a club and pay your money, can you do whatever you want?
Well, they can do whatever they want, but if it impinges upon the rights of the people who did come there to listen, the latter will oust the former toot sweet.
Have you seen that situation?
Sure. But I love it when people come to a club and get excited and respond to the musicians. They don't necessarily have to behave as if they were in an art gallery. You know, there's manners, of course there are manners, but within reason, you can enjoy yourself.
Are you aware of the differences in audiences? Can you tell whether it's a good audience tonight or a bad audience?
You know, maybe some other musicians would comment differently on this, but I've always found that the first set on a Friday night is one of the strangest audiences. They're not that responsive. But Saturday night audiences, all of the sets, especially the first and second sets, are real responsive. But usually that first set on a Friday night is like, wow, you know.
Is it hard to maintain your energy, your emotion?
Well, you just can't get affected by it. The mistake I used to make was just identifying too much with the, you know, because you want to please, you know, you're in the business of pleasing people. Even though you always hear about the artist talking about, you know, I just please myself. But hey, let's face it, you know, these people are, you know, they're helping you make your living. And also basically, in human nature, you want to, you know, I'm not one of these people who likes to, I just want to play in my living room. How many times have you heard that? I just want to play in my living room.
I want to do my thing.
Yeah, which is okay, because I like to play in my living room too, but I also like to eat, as you can see. But it's even more than that. I think there's a basic human need to express to other people. And
do you feel whole when you're playing that guitar, more whole than you do any other time in your life?
That's the whole thing. No pun intended. As soon as I discovered that I had the ability to learn to play some of this stuff that I revered and didn't know if I could do it or not, I consciously or unconsciously set my sights on that.
When you're up or down, can you hear it in your music? Could you play us a little section, how it might be when you're down or when you have no emotion?
When you're angry, I don't think it's easy to play. But you know what I found? I found that when you do this for years and years and years and years, according to whatever level you're at a particular time, you're not going to go too far above or too far below that. And before, there was such a wide range when I was coming up. You know, one night I'd be on, another night I'd be off. I think the biggest problem I had was trying too hard. Just try too hard.
Pressing.
It's very important to relax.
Show us the difference. Show us a few lines if you press them, and if you it's kind of laid back. We're back to that blues bass.
Let me see here. Oh boy.
This is guitar therapy.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's the more relaxed, even though it's a very sad song. You know.
We're almost at the end of the show, and as they say in showbiz, take us out.
Take us out? Okay, I'll take you out.
And we enjoyed so much, take us out slowly.
All
We'll
right.
go out slowly.
Nice and slow. Okay, I'll do a nice little Indian raga here.
To see more UWTV classics, visit uwtv.org/classics.